Hello my quilting family. Today we're going to do another part of our case study on the Churn Dash block. And today we're going to look at elongation. So what you can do with blocks is you can make them long and tall, right? Like this one. And this is the block we're going to make. Now I'm going to put the cutting instructions in the show notes, so you'll be able to follow along if you want to make this block. But it does provide a very whimsical, different look to your quilt. And we're going to sew two of them, we're going to put two of them together so I still maintain that 12.5-inch square. So when I'm finished I can add them right into my quilt. So what we're going to need is one accent piece of 2.5 inches by 8.5 inches. We're going to need 4 2.5-inch squares in low volume or neutral. We're going to need 4 accent 2 for the corners, 2.5-inch squares. And we're going to need 1 strip of neutral and 1 strip of color that's, both of them are 22 inches long at 1.5 inches wide. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly sew these together here and just get my colors together. Okay, so just hang on, it won't take long for this. Yeah, it's I hope life is treating you okay. And everything else is really good. It's been a busy week or two in this place, so just my brown is just a little bit longer. So I'm going to snip off the excess and the selvage on the white. Now, I've already done a lot of sewing on this block, so you don't have to sit there and watch me sew all the entire blocks. But what I do with the 2.5-inch squares is I put them together and I sew the longest diagonal line from point to point first, and then I move over 1/2 inch, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the point to point. This block is a little bit too small to do the 1/2 inch over and then do another line. So I'm not going to have a little brother, I'm going to do something else with it. So I'm just going to go point to point. And again, you can draw a line or iron your fabric. I've been sewing a long time, so me just going from point to point on a straight line is very simple. So I'm just going to put this to the side for now. So what I do is, okay, get my end. What I'm going to do with these two is I'll show you here a sec. I love a vintage machine. It just makes the prettiest sound. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off at 1/4 inch on this. I'm going to ask the cameraman maybe to move in. No? No? Okay, so it's just I'm going to leave 1/4 inch on the one side. Now, instead of what we did the last time is we sewed along this line to make a triangle. We're not doing that. We're going to sew along this line on both of them in the same direction with the neutrals up. So basically we're making a baby hourglass out of this. Because otherwise the unit here is pretty small. So now I open them up and I just finger press these little units to the dark. And then I match them so that they're going to look like this. And we're just going to run them through the sewing machine and nest that seam, and we're going to run through. Now I'm going to take everything that I've sewn off to the ironing board, and I'll meet you back here at the sewing machine. So we're back from the ironing board and the cutting table, and what I've done is I've pressed open my half square triangles, and I've also pressed open that long strip of 22 by 1.5 inch of the brown and the neutral. So I've cut these now at 8.5 inches long, and they're 8.5 by 2.5 now, and these ones are a 2.5 inch square. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to sew these together, and I know I had a couple questions on webbing, and we'll kind of cover that one in a separate video. But here is that little baby hourglass that I'm going to use from my half square triangles. Now I've trimmed this one down to 2 inches, and I will use this in another block. So, you know, just so you know, it doesn't go to waste. So let's go through sewing this block together. Now I web my blocks because normally I come to the sewing machine with a big stack of them. So again, I'm going to grab from the top, I'm going to flip over the center column, just like a book when you finish reading a book. And I'll line these up real nice. If there's any topics you guys would like to see, please comment. Or if there's anything I mentioned that you don't get, please let me know, and I'll either try and explain it to you or put out another video that maybe will show it better. We're last one. Oops, not quite. There we go. The reason I picked the Churn Dash too, the Churn Dash block, is it's a very forgiving little block. Oops, missed the thread. Okay. So now I take this block and I lay it back down so I know exactly where I am on this. But now I'm just going to take the first block. Make sure, that also is a check for me to make sure I've sewn the blocks together correctly. There we go. And that gets like this. I'm always sewing together. The quilters is always sew with a 1/4 inch seam or a scant 1/4 inch seam. It helps our piecing go together nicely. And if you're having problems with your 1/4 inch seam, let me know in the comments below, or if you need help with anything. Okay, and the last piece gets put together. But I try in any of the waist pieces, I try and make other little blocks with them. So that's always, you always have blocks on hand. So now I'm just going to do the other way because it's all together now, right? So I'm just going to open it up and go the other way. Now, I'm just going to snip as I go. And nest my seam. And then last seam and then we're done. Okay. The seams on this nest together really well, I might say, I might add. There's not a lot of... On this block they go together so slick, and this block is very forgiving, ideal for a beginner. And we are done. So now I'm going to take this block and press it nice and flat, and then I'm going to sew it to another block. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, we're back from the ironing board, and some of you may have noticed I did sew on this piece wrong. So I guess we're going to put another tutorial out about how to use your stitch ripper and how to correct the mistakes, because everybody makes them. So now, in order to make my block 12.5, I'm going to sew 2 of these elongated churn dashes together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab a couple of pins while I'm here, and you need to be able to see your point, because this point, these 2 points are going to match up and you want them to be perfect. So what you're going to do is you're going to put a pin in from the back and then a pin in from the front, and that's going to tell you where the needle of your sewing machine needs to go to make those points match. Now I'm not going to lock it, right? All I'm going to do is leave it like that. Now, and you want to do the other point as well, down at the end. And if one happens to be, with sewing, if one happens to be just a tad longer than the other, you put the bigger one on the bottom, and the feed dogs will actually ease it into the shorter piece that's on top. So we're just going to go, and the reason I'm pinning too is this is 12.5 inches. If I just were to start at the end, or start at the top here and work all the way down, I might have a bigger gap to be dealing with. So I don't want gaps, and I don't want to try, I want to really try and make my point. So what I'm going to do is just bend the pin out of the way, and I'm going to get as close to the needle with the pin still in, and then pull the pin out as we go along. And then we're going to sail along to the next pin, making sure that everything's at a good 1/4 inch. And because you're dealing with a lot of, usually at a point you're dealing with a little bit of bulk too. So we want to get right close, and don't be afraid to manually turn your sewing machine towards you. Okay, and then we meet our point, and now we're going to go through. Now I have a tub of these little 4 patches. They're waiting to become 4 patches, and I just sew them in usually as a leader and a project. A lot of quilters do. And that's another way of how you really manage your scraps, because you can make a lot of things very quickly just by having them as a leader ender. So now we're going to look at this to make sure that we've made our point. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to iron this seam open, and I'll be right back. And we're back. The points look pretty good. I, you know, depending on what I'm going to, who I'm going to make this for, and everything else, sometimes I don't get too fussy, but if I want my points to match and I was doing a show quilt, I would do, you know, more elaborate pinning methods or whatever. But I've got a couple of these now, and I think they're looking pretty good. So I hope you had fun with this elongation. And remember, this is where it all started. So I hope you have a great day, and you come on back to see what we're doing later. Bye! If you have questions about what you saw in this video, or you have ideas for content or something you want to see us do, please put those comments in the description below. But also, while you're there, like, share, and subscribe with your friends. That would really help us out. Okay, I want to thank you and have a great day.